Hey, thanks for joining us today. I'm meteorologist Taylor Cox, and we appreciate you hopping on for your Monday forecast of this short work week. Thanks to that holiday right in the middle of the week, we have a warm up as we head into our Christmas season, or I guess our Christmas Eve and Christmas Day holiday. Temperatures are a lot warmer across most of the U.S., but it's divided. You go farther up to the north and you have some cooler temperatures, winter weather, and even the potential for ice in some areas across the country. We'll talk about exactly where to expect that. Others are going to stay dry with that record-breaking heat across the central and southern portion of the U.S. Temperatures may be the warmest Christmas on record. And what about severe weather? Well, we're comparing this year to last year as we wrap up 2025. What does that look like compared to 2024? We're going to go ahead and jump right in to that severe weather wrap up. That'll be at the very end of our forecast. Let's go ahead and take a look at your 24-hour storm reports. Yeah, the severe weather has been very, very quiet across the U.S. over the last few days. That'll probably be what we see over the next few days as well. Very, very quiet in terms of severe weather. We'll talk about that. That may change for California over the next few days. We have several systems moving across the U.S., but really what we're watching for is a high pressure system that's setting up in the southern portion of the U.S. And we've got a low that's going to move across the Midwest. That could bring some winter weather into this area. You can see some of that snow highlighted there in white moving across places like Ohio and up to Michigan. That could also bring some winter weather across Pennsylvania, causing an ice issue in this area. A little bit of rain farther down to the south. We've got storms down in southern Texas. We'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. And then a wintry mix up to the north where we have also a wintry mix across Montana and Idaho. Thankfully not as windy in these places. Still some flooding concerns out in California for today, tomorrow. We'll talk about that flooding concern as we head into Wednesday. That's absolutely something that you need to have on your radar. Let's go ahead and take a look at the temperatures right now. Holy moly, it looks nice out there. 65 in Oklahoma City, 70 degrees in Dallas. We've got that sunshine out there right now. This is just a sneak peek of the type of warmth that you're going to get later on this week. We'll talk about those record-breaking temperatures here in just a few minutes. This heat is going to help to melt a lot of that snow, but we are going to see a U.S. divided where we have those warmer temperatures down to the south and cooler up to the north. So some of this snow may stick around a little bit, and we may even get more snow in some of these areas highlighted here in purple. You go out to the west and we have a fire weather concern highlighted there in pink. High wind for Wyoming. That'll be down in Cheyenne, Wyoming. We have some winter weather going on across the western portion of Wyoming, and then of course almost all of California included in that flood watch highlighted there in green. Now let's go ahead and let's walk you through all these different types of weather, right? We've got that fire weather, we've got that winter weather, we've got high wind, we've got flooding as well, we've got warm temperatures and dry conditions for some. What about the risk for severe weather? Oftentimes whenever we see those temperatures warm up, we start to say, are we going to get severe weather? For today, the answer is most likely no. The best chance for hail today is going to be down in Texas, but still, if you want any significant hail, you have to see these yellows or even oranges get on the board here. And what we're seeing today is just this milky white color. If we get any hail at all, it's going to be very, very small, maybe the size of a pea, very, very small. We're talking about like Dippin' Dot size hail. Not very exciting here, so no significant hail expected for today. Moving on, let's take a look at your future radar. You can see all of that snow out in the Midwest, a little bit of rain from Kentucky to Tennessee down to the south. Not a ton, just enough to maybe squeeze out a sprinkle or two from some clouds overhead. The main story today is going to be the snow out to the northeast, some high wind up to the north as well, and then of course those storms down in Texas. I'll look at your timeline for storms just to the north of Houston today. So we're talking about just to the north of I-10 and east of I-35. That'll be the best chances for storms today. You could get a strike of lightning, maybe a rumble of thunder, but for the most part, that severe risk is very, very low. Going back to your watches and warnings here, let's go ahead and let's take a look at that red flag warning. We've got some really strong winds across Colorado today. Actually, these winds were so strong on Friday of last week for thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. They had to shut off power in these areas to prevent wildfires from starting. What happens is these strong winds will knock over power lines or they'll knock over trees, which then knock into power lines. And that's how several fires will get started. So they shut off power back on Friday. Today, those winds will not be as strong, but we still have extremely dry conditions in this area. Very, very dry air for a good portion of the U.S. That's probably why you have to put a little extra moisture, a little extra lotion on your hands today, maybe more chapstick, drink a little bit more water today because of that dry air. But it's also causing a fire risk today. Take a look at those dry conditions across Colorado, not only today, but also through tomorrow. Strong winds as well. We've got max wind gusts in these areas up to 65 miles an hour at least. Strong wind gusts in this area. Here's a look at your fire concern. It's in that critical level, anywhere from Cheyenne all the way just to the west of Denver today. And then we've got elevated fire concerns all the way down into the panhandle of Texas and eastern portion of New Mexico. I think that conditions improve tomorrow and through the rest of the week, but you'll have to keep an eye on that. With warm and dry conditions, we absolutely have to keep an eye on that fire concern. And we haven't seen a ton of moisture in this area over the last few days, if not few weeks. So we're going to have to keep an eye on the drought concern in this area as well. Other places are getting too much of a good thing. We've got too much rain out in California over the last few days. That's going to continue as we head into the next few days. Let's take a look at some of these rainfall totals here. About 1.25 inches in Redding, California. Now you may say that's not a ton, but think about the elevation in this area. You get 1.25 inches at the top of the mountain, the middle of the mountain, at the bottom of the mountain, and it runs off and it piles up. And all of a sudden you've got a flooding issue on your hands in some of those low-lying areas, some of those canyons. You've got a flooding issue, some of those areas that people drive their cars. You've got running water across the roadways. Now this is cause for a flood outlook or a flood risk in these areas highlighted here in yellow. That's a level 2 flood risk. This means that scattered flash flooding is possible as we head through today, tomorrow, and it's even increased on Wednesday. I know I've got my date wrong up there, but this will be Wednesday, not Sunday. This is Wednesday right here, where we have a level 3 flood risk, which means numerous flash floods likely in a very, very populated area in the city of Los Angeles. They're highlighted in red. We also have a level 2 risk in San Francisco and in Las Vegas. So definitely something to keep an eye on as we head into the middle of this work week. Again, Christmas Eve, we still have that level 3 flood risk going on, level 2 flood risk on Christmas Day. So we have to keep an eye on that as they are going to get just moisture over and over and over in the form of snow and rain over the next few days. Moving on to your long-term future radar here. Just a nationwide view because we don't have any storms expected on Tuesday either. No storms expected on Wednesday except for a few storms on the west coast. I think could produce some strong wind gusts in this area. We're going to see a few squall lines set up in this area. We're going to be watching for some strong wind. You go farther up to the north, you've got several rounds of snow moving through this area, just a few low pressure systems that are going to continue to move through the northwest and, through the Midwest over the next few days. So let's go ahead and break this down for severe weather. Let's take a look at Wednesday. We've got an area highlighted here in red that you could get storms, but those stronger storms highlighted here in green. This does include San Francisco and just outside of Los Angeles, closer to the coast. Taking a look at your wind forecast here, the biggest risk that you're going to see on Wednesday is going to be that high wind, anywhere from 60 to maybe 65. 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts are absolutely possible, coming from a line of storms, we call these squall lines here, that are moving through the west coast, moving through California. The other really big story, other than the ice out east, flooding out west, right in the middle of the U.S., what's going on for the rest of us? It's dry and it's warm. We could even call it hot in some areas that are going to have to run their AC as we head into the middle of the week, into Christmas. Have you ever run your AC during Christmas before? Well, we'll take a look at a few records that have been broken over the last few years. 2005, 2021, that was a warm year for Oklahoma. Let's take a look at your future temperatures. Christmas Eve, it looks like temperatures are going to warm up to the 50s in both Denver and in Kansas City, 60s in St. Louis, 70s in Oklahoma City, Dallas, and southern Texas. It's a warm Christmas Eve. You may be ditching the coats and grabbing the AC or grabbing maybe a t-shirt. Do you guys have ugly Christmas t-shirts instead of ugly Christmas sweaters? As we head into Thursday, Christmas Day, it's even warmer. Temperatures are in the mid-70s. 74 in Oklahoma City, 6 in Kansas City, and 78 in Dallas. Now, how does this stack up compared to our records? Now, your record for your Christmas Day high temperature in Minneapolis is 54. Okay, you're not going to break it in Minneapolis. What about Omaha? You're going to get close, but it does not look like you're going to break that record in Omaha either. Now, Kansas City, it does look like you're going to be breaking records on Christmas Day for those high temperatures. 67 is your record, and it looks like temperatures are going to be in the upper 60s at 68. Little Rock, too. Your forecasted high in Little Rock will be 70. Your record is 78, so you're not going to break anything there. But Oklahoma City, it looks like we are going to break records in Oklahoma City. Dallas, you're going to get really, really close. Austin, it doesn't look like you're going to break that record, but still, 75 on Christmas Day in Austin, we'll take it. Denver breaking records on Christmas Day as well. Your record is 69 in Denver. You broke that back in 2005. Now 20 years later, you're going to break that record once again, or at least that's what's forecasted. So a lot of people above average across the entire U.S., but mainly through the central, southern, and eastern portion of the U.S. It looks like Friday is just as nice. Temperatures return to the 60s and 70s for a good portion of us, and Saturday as well. So even if you have more holiday plans as you head into the weekend, you're going to have good weather to get outside and enjoy those holiday plans. You know, this is the best time of year to go walk around neighborhoods and look at Christmas lights. You don't have to stay in the warm car. You can get out and walk around. Maybe go ice skating, or maybe slushy if you go ice skating with these warm temperatures. All right, take a look at your Christmas warm-up. Yeah, we continue to stay well above average. We're talking about 10 to 20 degrees above average for a lot of people across the U.S. This will continue as we head into the last week of December, December 27th through the 31st. It looks like everyone has a really good chance to be above average in terms of temperatures. What about that moisture? All right, this is interesting because we've got more moisture moving into the central portion of the U.S. by the end of this year. I've already seen on social media the outlooks for big rainstorms, big severe weather chances by the end of this year, big snowstorms by the end of this year. Now hold on, we're not saying that that's going to happen. What we're saying is that we have more moisture moving in here, and you get that heat, and you get that moisture, and you could have something interesting going on. It's too soon to tell, but as we get closer, keep an eye on the very end of this year. So basically this time next week, we'll have a ton more information on a system that could come in. But you know, we get this warm weather and we oftentimes, we think, could we get severe weather? Well, meteorologist Michaela Smith compared this year's severe weather compared to last year. Okay, Michaela, tell us what you found. Was this year more active, less active compared to 2024?
You know, overall this year was less active compared to last year. Last year, tornado specifically was the second most we've had on record since the 1950s.
Wow.
So it was going to be hard to top that.
Yes,
you know, it was a very active year, but we still had quite a bit of interesting things, and I specifically mentioned hail to you earlier.
That's interesting. You've got some numbers behind us.
I do have some numbers.
I'm going to go ahead and let you break that down.
So what you see behind me, this is just the preliminary report. I wanted to show you a map of everything so far that has been calculated for 2025. That includes tornadoes, severe wind, and severe hail. So again, you can see all the numbers, and it really favors the central and eastern half of the U.S. You still get some strong winds out towards the west, but maybe not as many tornado or hail reports in some locations. So really just wanted to show you this to kind of start off. And then also something here at HailTrace we always like to look at is just compared to the year before, or just really comparing the last several years, we look at hail specific reports. So this green right here, this is 2025. There were times in the spring, especially April and May, that we were actually ahead of that average. But then you can see the rest of the year, especially once we hit the summertime and then stuck around through the fall and now the winter, that we are actually below the mean. Compared to some other years, this is 2013. Yeah, we're well off some of those other years that we've seen quite a bit more hailstorms. But I want to talk about other storms too. So we're going to break down since January 1st. There have been, this is preliminary numbers. These are not final official numbers. Those won't come out until a little bit later on in 2026. There have been 1,543 tornadoes reported, over 5,428 hail reports, so lots of hailstorms this year, And then high wind numbers, check this out, almost 17,000 since January 1st. Now I want to compare that to 2024 just so you can kind of see, because we talked about how 2024, especially for tornadoes, was the second most on record in the US since the 1950s. So there was 17,000 or 1,791 in 2024. So we were below, and this number is likely to drop because again, this is the preliminary number. So once they actually go back and look at some of those reports, this number will likely drop a little bit. But I want to show you something interesting. Hail reports, actually in 2025, we've had more than we had in 2024. And then the wind reports, we don't have quite as many. There were over 20,000 last year, sitting only about 17,000 for this year. So we had less tornadoes reported, we had less windstorms reported, but hail reports, that was actually a little bit higher in 2025. And finally, last thing I think was just very interesting, kind of looking back at severe weather. We obviously spend a lot of the year talking about hurricane season that starts in June, wrapped up in November. And 2025 was the first time in a decade that we did not have a single landfalling hurricane in the US. That was since 2015. And then I looked since 2000, so over the last 25 years, 26 years, and there's only been 8 times that that's happened. Most of those were before 2015 though. So we had a long stretch between 2015 and 2025 that every single season we had a landfalling hurricane, at least one in the US. Last year, in 2024, there were 5 hurricanes that made landfall in the US. 2 of those which were major hurricanes, which was Hurricane Helene, that was a Category 4 hurricane, and then Hurricane Milton, that was a Category 3. So did not have any in the US this year. That doesn't mean we didn't have any major hurricanes. Obviously, we still had Hurricane Melissa that was very impactful this year, but I thought that was also something very interesting that we spent a whole decade since the last time we did not have a single landfalling hurricane in the US. So 2025 may not have been maybe as severe as years past, but doesn't mean it was without any crazy weather. Taylor, if you want to jump back in, I know we were talking about just to the side, the hail thing, I kind of surprised both of us, I think, a little bit, just because we talked about tornado-wise, it felt like a little bit less this year. Obviously, hurricanes, to everybody, it was less this year.
Well, I found 2 things really, really interesting from that. First of all, with hail, as you mentioned, I think that we had, just from my meteorologist intuition, more hailstorms this year that hit less cities.
Yeah.
So maybe that really big hailstorm just didn't hit a very populated area, because we measure our star ratings, our hailstorm ratings here at HailTrace based on what they hit by population. You know, how many homes were hit from that hailstorm. And we didn't have as many 5-star hailstorms this year as we did last year. However, we had more hail reports this year and less last year. So I just thought that was interesting. Oftentimes you could have more storms, but it's more about who do they impact.
Yeah, where do they hit? You know, if it's in the middle of nowhere, you're not getting as many reports from any of these people talking about it, versus you get those right in the middle of the city, everyone's talking about it.
Absolutely. Well, in hurricanes too, you know, we had hurricanes this year. We had a major hurricane down in Jamaica, but it didn't make landfall here in the US. So that number still, for the US, landfalling hurricanes stays at 0, which hasn't happened in 10 years, but happened about every other year back in the 2000s.
Yeah. Very interesting, I thought.
Yeah, some great numbers. Thank you for your report.
Absolutely.
What a great breakdown there. So we're going to continue with our forecast here, wrapping it up. Make sure that you follow us on all forms of social media. Before we head out, I'm going to make sure that we have answered all of your weather questions today. It looks like we're pretty quiet in terms of YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, but we do have, as always, we go behind the scenes on TikTok. So let's see if we have any weather questions on TikTok. Oh, at some point, Michaela, we must have said 6-7 because we have a lot of 6-7 questions on TikTok. No weather questions that I see right now, but as always, oftentimes we answer a lot of your questions throughout this live forecast. You can always comment or DM us any other weather questions that you may have, or if you have a question about our hail, wind, or tornado maps. As we mentioned earlier, we rate those hail and wind maps at HailTrace.com, so you can go back and you can look at the entire 2025, 2024, 2023. We have over 10 years of hail maps at HailTrace.com. You can check that out. Give us a call for a subscription at 855-334-4245 or email us at info@HailTrace.com. This warm weather, this nice weather that we have in December, is the perfect time to get back out and go track down those areas that were hit multiple times back in May, June, and July. Of course, you can find that at HailTrace.com, so head over there. As always, we'll be back here tomorrow for your daily live noon forecast. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back here, same time, same place.